Hi everyone, it's Rachel here with the Shades of Orange. Today I'm going to do the second part of my September and October wrap-up, talking about the mysteries, thrillers, and graphic novels that I read during those months. Let's get started. First, I want to talk about mysteries, and I read A Gathering of Shadows by Linda Castillo, which I listened to on audio. If that author sounds familiar, that's because I've been binge reading her mysteries for about a year now, and this is the most recent one in this series. This series is all about a chief of police in a small town near an Amish community, and in this particular one, the main chief is investigating the death of a young teenage Amish boy. He died in a fire in a farmhouse, and it quickly becomes apparent that it was murder. I really liked the story in this one. I was completely engaged. I just thought it was really interesting and absolutely held my attention. I did somewhat guess the ending, but I still really enjoyed just the experience. These are the kind of mysteries that I consider to be a bit cozy, even though they definitely have some dark edges to them, but they're just really comforting to return back to the same characters, and there's a lot of side story all about the chief of police and her personal life, and I just love it. So I highly recommend checking out the series by Linda Castillo. I just love her Kate Burkholder series and would highly recommend it. You can start back with the first book, Sworn to Silence, or really you can jump in at any point. But because it's so character focused, I just recommend reading or listening to the whole thing because it's definitely one of my favorite mystery series. Speaking of mystery series I love, I have to mention that I also read The Shadows We Hide by Allen Eskens. I did a whole separate review on this. I requested a copy from the publisher. He is perhaps my favorite mystery author, and this is his newest one. I talked about that in length in the other video, but this is about a journalist who finds out that a man who might be his father has died and was murdered, and so he's investigating what happened. This is another mystery that is very character focused. I absolutely loved it and would definitely recommend it. I thought it was so good. Definitely one of the best books I read this month, so another winner right here. After that, I read a young adult mystery called The End of Everything by Megan Abbott. And this is about a young girl whose best friend has gone missing. She believes that her best friend was picked up or kidnapped by a man and is trying to help the police to figure out what happened to her young friend. I love the premise of this book. I'm always a fan of kidnappings and all sorts of things involving that. This book definitely has some darker elements to it because of a young girl going missing, possibly with an old man involved. You can kind of guess where some of the themes go in the story, so not for everyone. Definitely some icky subject matter kind of tied in there, but I have such mixed feelings about this book. I really love Megan Abbott's writing. I think she is incredible at writing prose, and I really noticed this when I listened to her books on audio. She just has such a beautiful style, but sometimes her plots are a little bit shallow, and that was my complaint with this one, is despite a premise that I should have loved, the story just felt weak, and I just felt like it didn't really have a satisfying ending or middle, to be honest. I just felt it was more of a story about characters, and it just didn't have enough narrative drive to completely keep me invested. But I love her writing so darn much that I still half want to recommend her books to people. I would personally recommend going with something else a little more popular of hers, like Dare Me, I think is a better book. So this one honestly was kind of a miss for me. I just didn't think The End of Everything was very good, but I still really like her writing. I try reading everything that she writes because she has so much potential. It's so frustrating. Next, I read a book called Little Darlings by Melanie Golding, and this book actually isn't coming out till next year. I ended up requesting a digital copy via NetGalley and some of the other review sites because I really wanted to check it out. I was hearing amazing early buzz. This is more of a thriller with some horror elements to it, so I almost could have put this in my horror wrap-up, but I felt it fell a little bit more on the thriller side, so I want to talk about it in this video. And this is about a young mother who just has given birth to twin boys, and is right in the throes of those early parenthood struggles. She is sleep deprived and overwhelmed and is just struggling to get by. And in this troubled mental state, she potentially starts to see things that may or may not be there. And she starts to worry that her sons have been replaced by something else, and the story just goes from there. So it's one that if you like stories about creepy children, if you like stories about parenthood and are perhaps a parent yourself, I think you'll most relate to this book, because it goes into the elements of birth and labor and all of that in a lot of detail. Honestly, it was more graphic in that way than I expected. I was a little bit traumatized. I really don't enjoy reading or seeing scenes about labor and delivery. It's not something I'm looking forward to in my own life. But the book itself had so many elements I love. I really enjoy when mysteries and thrillers and horror kind of get wrapped up, and those books that kind of cross genres usually work really well for me. I like things about this book, but honestly, it just never fully held my attention. I don't know what it was. I just never really got invested in the characters. I just found them a little bit bland. And despite, again, a premise that should have been amazing, because I love creepy children in books, but I just found this one kind of mediocre. So not actually a bad book. I think I gave it like 3 stars, but there's so much amazing early buzz going on around this book. So I'm just doing my part as I usually do and kind of squash the buzz and say that I don't think it's quite living up to the hype that other reviewers are giving it right now. It's not for me. I know other people loved it, but keep in mind that I have kind of hit or miss relationship with thrillers these days, but I didn't think it was particularly special, unfortunately. So liked it, didn't love it, unfortunately. It's frustrating. Speaking of thrillers with horror elements, I also read Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage. This I listened to on audio, which was a great way to experience it. I thought the narrator did a really good job. This story follows a mother who's taking care of her daughter who has been mute since birth and now is beginning to speak, but now that she's saying things, they are very dark and disturbing. Already, this mother and daughter have had a very troubled relationship. The mother kind of feels like the daughter is out to get her, but when the father comes home, he doesn't see this side of his daughter, and she really acts like an angel around him. It's a strange book to classify because it's partially a thriller, but at the same time it's very slow paced. It's almost more of a character drama. A lot of this book really revolves around the fact that you have this mother trying to decide if her daughter is perhaps evil or psychopathic or troubled, or if she has done something in her own life that has caused her daughter to be this way. A lot of discussions of like nature versus nurture, and it kind of, you know, plays around with these different elements, so you're not sure if something supernatural is going on or if this is just a story of a family with a troubled daughter. And I liked it, I didn't love it. I know this is kind of the theme of this whole video, but again, creepy children. The daughter's voice was fantastic. I loved when they switched to her perspective and you got to hear these very adult creepy things coming out of this young girl's head, but unfortunately it just didn't fully work for me. I know other people love this book. I could see it getting on a lot of like end of the year best of the best lists, but it won't make mine, I'll tell you that now. It was all right. The narration definitely made it better on audio, but it just didn't come together for me. I'd like to know if anyone else had the same experience with this one, because it's been really buzzy and so I've been meaning to check it out all year. So finally did that and it was just okay. And finally, I want to end the video talking about graphic novels, and I read Look Straight Ahead by Elaine M. Will, and this is a book about a teenager who is trying to become an artist when he has a mental breakdown. And this is such a good fictional graphic novel to pick up for anyone who wants to see really amazing representation of mental health In the story, I don't think it's ever explicitly said what he struggles with, but it's definitely a range of depression and anxiety, and I think that anyone who has struggled with any kind of mental struggles themselves will really identify with this character. While this was fiction, I really felt like it read like a graphic memoir, which are some of my favorites, so I almost feel like the author really brought a lot of authenticity into the story. I don't know if it's an own voices story, but it sure felt like one just because it felt so honest and it didn't feel over the top or anything like that. I just really enjoyed it. I was sucked into the story and would definitely recommend it. So anyone looking for perhaps a more underhyped graphic novel that focuses on mental illness, it's about a teenager, but I definitely think this book appeals to all ages and would definitely recommend it. The artwork was great. It was mostly done in black and white with a couple of color pages mixed in here just to really highlight particular scenes, and I just thought it was so well done, and the artwork really enhanced the story. It really was used to capture the mental state of the character. So I think this is a really good example of when a graphic novel demonstrates why it was meant to be written in this form. I don't think this book would have been as powerful if it was done, say, as a novel. So definitely recommend this one. And after that, I read Saga Volume 9 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I, of course, have been loving this series, although some of the later volumes have been a little hit or miss for me. I didn't think that Volume 9 was quite as good as Volume 8, and if I'm honest, I'm ready for the series to be wrapped up. I'm not quite as invested in all of the side plots. At this point, I really just want to see what happens to the core family, and I gotta say, this book ended with the cruelest cliffhanger, which is really frustrating considering they've announced that they're gonna take a hiatus before they put out Volume 10. So I understand it's at least a year wait before they continue on with the series. So I'm gonna have to find some other graphic novels to read in the meantime. But still a good volume. I definitely like some of the sections in it, and we'll be continuing on whenever Volume 10 comes out. So that wraps up everything I read in the months of September and October. I'd love to know if you're planning on picking up any of the books I mentioned, or if you had similar thoughts over the books that I didn't completely love. Sometimes it's nice to have company when you don't have the most popular opinion. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, good or bad, down below. Agree, disagree, it's all good. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.